3, 2, 1, go. No!
Hi everyone, today we're talking shortboards, because electric shortboards are pretty hot right now, thanks mostly to the new Riptide R1. For our first ever video, we figured we'd pit this trendsetter against a couple other boards in the segment to see if its performance justifies its considerable hype, and to help prospective shortboard buyers choose their next ride. In case you aren't familiar with Riptide, and we highly doubt this, the R1 is a 31-inch dual belt-driven board with a focus on rideability. In short, its designers wanted to build a skateboard for skaters rather than a rideable for tech yuppies, so they created a board with a beautiful, nimble deck and soft 78 Duro wheels. At $600, it's the most expensive board in our lineup, and with only a 97 watt-hour battery and an advertised top speed of 18 miles an hour, it's also the least spec'd out. So its appeal truly rests on its claimed rideability. Our first competitor is the venerable Meepo 1.5 with a 30-inch deck option. With its unforgiving dual hub motors and austere compact deck, the Meepo seems unlikely to best the R1 in ride comfort. However, at a price of $400, its larger 144 watt-hour battery and advertised top speed of 22 miles per hour gives it some serious appeal on paper. Our final competitor is a dual motor belt-driven DIY kit from DIYEboard that we slapped onto a globe deck. To be clear, we use DIY in the loosest sense of the word here. With this kit, all you need to do is mount the trucks and enclosure to a deck of your choosing and you're off and running. And if that sounds like too much work, consider that for only $400 this kit comes with the exact same drivetrain components as found on the R1, with the exception of its battery, which provides significantly higher output and a whopping capacity of 360 watt-hours. Of course, manufacturer specs are meaningless until confirmed by objective testing. To decide which of these boards is most deserving of your hard-earned cash, we spent the last week riding them to work and setting them loose on local trails. And to evaluate their performance, we rigged up our sensors to precisely measure their top speed and acceleration. Since we know you'll want to go fast, we'll start by examining the measured straight-line performance of these boards, which we display using graphs of speed versus time and acceleration versus speed. If that sounds complicated, keep in mind that we simply aim to establish how hard a board can push the rider at a given speed. For reference, here are plots of the boosted V2 Dual Plus. With a 145-pound rider, the boosted can accelerate from 5 to 15 miles per hour in an impressive 2.3 seconds. First up, here's our data for the Meepo. Amazingly, at just a third of the price, the Meepo trades blows with the boosted, providing greater acceleration at low speeds and taking just 1/5 of a second longer to accelerate from 5 to 15 miles per hour. It even maxes out at a slightly higher top speed. Moving on, the DIY kit's 5 to 15 time is nearly identical to that of the Meepo. However, while the Meepo kicks harder at low speeds, by 10 miles an hour, the DIY kit has regained the advantage, which it holds all the way up to its impressive top speed of roughly 27 miles per hour. We consider this a victory for the DIY kit, but preferences may vary. However, the real standout is the R1, which pretty much gets its ass kicked from start to finish and takes a whopping 3.6 seconds to accelerate from 5 to 15 miles per hour, over a second slower than its closest rival. To its credit, the measured top speed of 19.5 miles per hour is faster than advertised, but considering this board's price, this feels like a damning loss. As a quick side note, for those who found this interesting, you can view interactive versions of the graphs you saw here and rank boards by acceleration time over a speed range of your choosing at our website, SkateMetric.com. In any case, power isn't everything, especially when it comes to shortboards, so let's examine each board individually and talk about our experiences riding them over the past week. The Meepo is unique in that it has both the shortest deck and the longest wheelbase, thanks to the placement of the wheels at the very ends of the deck. The idea here is to preserve high-speed stability without compromising portability, but Meepo didn't exactly nail the execution. First, and most obviously, this design does not leave room for a kicktail. Perhaps more unfortunately, due to the way the deck narrows at the ends, it's actually difficult for the rider to take as wide a stance as the wheelbase ought to offer, making it tricky to maintain balance while accelerating. At this point, we should note that all three boards share the same ESC receiver combo, which we find to be somewhat latent and unpredictable. However, this is particularly frustrating with the Meepo due to the aforementioned deck shortcomings and the board's massive low-end torque. Gripes aside though, the deck does provide excellent stability at high speeds, making it surprisingly strong for trail riding. Another unique feature of the Meepo is its hub motors, which, like the deck, work well in some settings and not so well in others. Meepo's sensored hubs kick hard off the line, run nearly silently, feel tough as nails, and don't limit ground clearance. Unfortunately, they also don't place much rubber between your feet and the pavement, resulting in a bone-shatteringly stiff ride that works fine on smooth surfaces, but not so well around the city. So ultimately, this is a high-quality, thoughtfully designed product at a great price, but it clearly wants to be a longboard, not a shortboard. In other words, if you want a Meepo 1.5, we suggest going with the 38-inch deck option, unless you really need portability. Moving along to the Riptide, the R1's poor straight-line performance does become easier to forgive once you get a chance to thread it through a few tight urban spaces. Its wider deck, shorter wheelbase, and kicktail allow it to zip around corners far too tight for the Meepo, and thanks to its belt-driven 78 Duro wheels and thick risers, the ride is also much more comfortable. For urban riding, we feel that the belt-driven system is a much better choice than hubs, but it's worth noting that it is louder, creates additional rolling resistance, reduces ground clearance, and requires more maintenance. One unfortunate design flaw in the R1's belt drive is a lack of a belt tensioning mechanism. If you buy this board, be prepared to go through a number of belts as they do have a tendency to stretch out over time. So does the R1's rideability offset its poor performance? Well, not exactly. The R1 feels as slow and feeble in real life as the charts suggest, and riding it everywhere with the throttle pegged gets boring very quickly. It's also worth noting that this lack of power becomes particularly evident on hills. In short, there are certainly reasons to prefer the R1 to the Meepo, but at its current price point, it's difficult to recommend it enthusiastically. Finally, our goal for this DIY kit was to create an R1 clone without the poor performance and limited range. We must stress once again that this kit comes with the exact same drivetrain components as the R1. The only differences are the lower price, the far better battery, and the need to mount your own deck. To be fair, these benefits do increase the size and weight of the enclosure though. Because we aren't great at planning, we had to drill our shortboard deck and move the trucks out to accommodate the enclosure. The resulting board has roughly the same wheelbase as the R1, as well as a kicktail. However, our setup is a little bit lower and narrower, which improves stability at high speeds, but reduces maneuverability somewhat. In any case, there's little value in discussing the deck we chose because you can buy whatever deck you want with this kit. However, we are very fond of the setup we created, as it seems to strike a nice balance in terms of portability, maneuverability, and stability. As we discussed, the board's performance is arguably the strongest of the three. Unlike the R1, it feels peppy and exciting at almost any speed, making it a worthy trail cruiser. This is actually one of the only off-the-shelf boards we've tested so far that feels satisfyingly fast on an open trail, because, let's be honest, a board is only truly fast enough on a trail if you're terrified to ride it flat out. Of course, these aren't trail cruisers, but versatility is always a plus. Granted, DIYEboards likely won't provide as much in the way of customer service or repairs, but then again, they also sell all the parts in the kit individually, and none are terribly expensive or difficult to replace. So, if you have 30 or so minutes to spare, this kit allows you to build your own R1 that will smoke Riptide's board in terms of range, acceleration, and top speed. It doesn't even cost that much. It's a difficult deal to pass up, and it's even more difficult to return to the R1 after riding a board with this powertrain. Needless to say, this is our favorite of the three boards. However, between the Meepo and the R1, it remains difficult to pick a winner. For all of its advantages, the Meepo simply isn't a good shortboard. It's a good longboard with a short deck. The R1, on the other hand, is a generic, low-performing powertrain slapped onto a beautiful, functional deck. If it were $400 like the Meepo, we think it'd be the clear winner in this category, but at its current price, we're having a difficult time recommending it. The bottom line here, both boards have their strengths and weaknesses, and depending on your preferences, either one may be the superior choice for you. But we recommend checking out this DIYEboards kit first.